Spare a thought, please, for these poor bags of cocaine. They had a rocky hard-luck life before their demise. A choppy 9,000 miles aboard a small yacht from South America to a Pacific island before being hauled to a makeshift airfield for a nail-biting ghost flight aboard a broken plane flown by a broken pilot. Their destination was Australia, where mobsters were anxiously waiting for them, only for the plane to crash in the jungle. This half-ton stash spent the next 4 lonely years in a police vault before finally seeing sunshine again last week, just fleetingly, when carried away for execution. The mob reporter here with news of one of the world's most storied stashes of cocaine, but really it's the wild tale of the men who bought them, stashed them, floated them, flew them, hid them, died for them, lost them, found them, and eventually of those who destroyed them. Let me tell you about it. In theory, the years-long plot seemed simple. Smuggle bulk cocaine from South America to Australia, using the nearby island of Papua New Guinea as a transit point. But let's break it down. Step 1. Get a plane. A well-used Cessna 402C was bought by a Papua New Guinea company in 2018, using many small transactions to try to avoid detection. They moved the plane to a rural airfield in Mariba, in far north Queensland, across the Coral Sea from Papua New Guinea. The plane was a mess. Its flight worthiness certificate had been revoked, but this syndicate didn't seem to mind. Step 2. Find a pilot. They needed a pilot with the right kind of experience, and they found a perfect fit in this man, David John Cutmore, an unemployed pilot and flight instructor in Australia who had experience with smuggling. He had flown secret flights in between his normal aviation jobs, including smuggling rare exotic birds to New Zealand. His secret flights, though, had been dogged by rickety planes and lousy luck. He was dubbed the Bumbling Birdman when he ran afoul of authorities in New Zealand. He used a different code name during the cocaine conspiracy. He went by Top Gun. It's hard to say that without cringing. Cutmore liked to compare himself to Tom Cruise, but usually from a different movie. American Made, where Cruise played a pilot flying cocaine for drug lord Pablo Escobar. The stress of his work wasn't good for Cutmore. After they bought the beat-up Cessna, he had a heart attack, but he recovered enough to take the captain's chair once again for this plot, even though he had lost his pilot's license. The syndicate didn't seem to mind about that either. Step 3. Secure bulk cocaine. The drugs were produced in a jungle lab in South America. Police believe it was in Peru. It was packed in 28 bags and stuffed aboard this private sailboat, apparently in Panama, for their long journey. The boat was captained by this man, 52-year-old sailor Carlos Statanasio. The sailor was broken too. He had colon cancer. Like Walter White, the protagonist in the TV series Breaking Bad, perhaps that pushed him over the edge. He set off on his months-long journey, bobbing across the ocean with the 28 bags of coke as his only company. Step 4. Hire local help. By March 2020, the sailor had made it to Papua New Guinea, dropping anchor off the coast 100 miles east of the capital, Port Moresby. A crew of locals were ready to help. The 28 bags were hauled ashore, hidden in blue storage drums, and rolled onto 2 banana boats for a trip up the coast to hide until the mobsters sent word. The sailor then docked at the Royal Papua Yacht Club and hung around for months, perhaps waiting to be paid when the load was in the hands of the buyers. Step 5. Build an airstrip. The local crew in Papua New Guinea cleared a stretch of brush some 1,400 yards long and 16 yards wide using heavy machinery. When a few nosy locals asked what they were up to, they said they were building a road. Everything was now falling into place. While all of this was being cobbled together in supposed secrecy, the deeper secret was that police were all over them. Members of the syndicate, police say, had pulled off an earlier cocaine flight in 2018. That one was successful. Investigators couldn't find that cocaine, but they had suspects and they kept an eye on them. The suspicious transactions used to buy the plane attracted closer scrutiny and stepped up the probe with wiretaps and surveillance. Cops decided to let the plot unroll and then nabbed them and the coke as soon as the plane landed back in Australia. That explains why I have unexpected video of the syndicate preparing the plane for takeoff. On Sunday, July 26, 2020, around 8:40 in the morning, police saw the plane be loaded up with cans of aviation fuel, 3 64-inch flat-screen TVs, and PlayStation gaming consoles, and then watched the pilot take off by himself an hour later. Cutmore kept his plane at 2,700 feet, literally flying under the radar, and turned off his tracking transponder. That's what made it a ghost plane, and his trip a black flight. He made it across the Coral Sea around noon, and headed along the coast of Papua New Guinea to the landing strip. So far, so good. But Cutmore's long string of bad luck struck again. Torrential rain started as he approached the landing. As he made his descent, the left wing of the plane clipped a tree, and the wingtip was torn off. He still managed to land, touching down around 12:20 p.m. 3 men waiting in 3 trucks were there. It was the local crew. They unloaded the fuel, TVs, and PlayStations. Why bring electronics? Well, that's what the 3 locals wanted from the syndicate. But don't worry, the pilot also gave them 25,000 Australian dollars each, about 16,000 US dollars. They're not rubes. They refueled the plane from the jerry cans and loaded the 28 bags of coke into the back of the plane, and by 12:40 the pilot was ready to go. As he was taking off, he saw his plane wasn't climbing. He pulled back on the throttles to abort and returned to ground. He touched down at speed, with only 400 yards of wet runway still ahead of him. The runway ended and the plane skidded into the brush, crashing into trees. Now I pause here a moment in wonder. Not about the crash, per se, but over this. When I was looking for the landing strip on Google satellite images, I found it. You see the long scar of the strip visible from the air. But then I noticed a tiny white dot. I zoomed in and, will you look at this? The wreckage is still there, lying broken in the brush 4 years later. I wish I lived closer. It'd make a cool road trip. But let's get back to the story, because the hijinks have only begun. While that frantic action was going on at the landing strip, back at the airport in Australia, people were anxious for the plane to chug back into view. There were those allegedly waiting there to collect their prize, and hiding nearby, a police task force waiting to arrest them when it landed. Everyone anxiously waited. It's hard to know which group was the first to know something was wrong. The smugglers might have wanted to avoid using their phones, or they might have been just too busy. When the plane crashed, it set off an automatic distress beacon, which went out at 12:46 p.m. Because the plane flew in secretly, however, aviation officials in Papua New Guinea found all known planes were accounted for and ignored the alert. The smugglers at the landing strip, of course, didn't know that. For all they knew, emergency crews were en route, so they scrambled to retrieve the bags and the pilot, tossing them all back in their trucks. They set fire to the plane and sped off along a dirt road deeper into the jungle. There, in a mangle of mangrove trees, they stashed everything, except the pilot. They dropped him off here, at his hotel. At some point, Australian authorities connected the distress beacon to the black flight, and by 2:30 p.m., Australian police called the Papua New Guinea police and told them the plane had crashed. Officers there eventually spotted smoke and found the abandoned plane, but no coke and no suspects. In Australia, police then made their move, rushing in on 3 suspects near the airport and 2 in Melbourne. Police stopped the truck on its way to the airport to collect the cargo. Officers found this clever hiding spot in the back. It's a deep hole cut into the middle of a stack of drywall sheets, presumably to be filled with the cocaine and then covered by full drywall sheets. Over the next couple of days, there were raids, searches, and arrests on the island. They bagged the Australian pilot, the Italian sailor, and the 3 locals. 5 days after the crash, the bags of cocaine were found in the jungle. It weighed approximately 549 kilograms. It was the largest drug seizure in the island's history. Adding to the intrigue, an investigation revealed the plane had been bought by a company that was owned by the president of a political party in Papua New Guinea, a man named Jeffrey Paul Bull. But Bull was already dead. He had arrived at a secretive nighttime meeting in a parking lot in late 2019, after the first coke flight, but before the second one crashed. When Bull walked through the parking lot, a car gunned forward and ran him down. He managed to get up, but the attacker started stabbing him in a frenzy with a black-handled kitchen knife. His killer was convicted of murder earlier this year. Now, of the 5 men busted in Australia, 1 has been acquitted, the truck driver carrying the drywall. He said he had no idea this hauling job was supposed to involve cocaine. 4 men remain before the courts, pleading not guilty and disputing the charges. For them, the accusations remain allegations only. There is a restaurateur in his 30s, accused of being the boss, named Salvatore Formica, known as Sam. He has alleged family ties to the 'Ndrangheta, a powerful mafia that originated in the southern Italian region of Calabria. He was accused in court of being a member. There's a bar owner named Aiden Coder, also in his 30s, and a financial advisor and part-time teacher in his 60s, Pierino Forni, known as Peter. And finally, a construction tradesman named George Mackham, age 40. Their court appearances are still unfolding after an alarming length of time. But in Papua New Guinea, things wrapped up much faster. The pilot was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the same as the 3 guys in the local crew. The Italian sailor was sentenced to 19 years, despite pleas from Italy for him to be sent home for cancer treatment. Which brings us back to the recent destruction of the storied bags of cocaine. That was prompted by the court in Papua New Guinea. A judge ordered police to destroy it and was impatient it hadn't yet been done. To comply, the police commander who led the island's end of the probe came to Australia to witness its destruction. At the time of the crash, it was attributed to the narcos being too greedy and overloading the plane. That's only part of the story. The official crash report by aviation authorities said the wing that was damaged during landing was a primary culprit. It didn't allow the plane to produce enough lift. The heavy cocaine might have played a role. In the end, as spectacular as it was, the crash really didn't make much difference. Whether it crashed on the island or landed back in Australia, those involved in the plot were doomed either way. And regardless of the crash, these bags of cocaine, jostled around the world by plane, boats, and trucks, were destined to meet the same fiery fate, vaporized in a furnace. Please tap the thanks button to leave me a tip, and give this video a like and leave a comment. That helps juice the algorithm, and is a small thing that helps me a lot. And please make sure you're subscribed to the Mob Reporter with notifications set to all. Thanks for watching to the end.